Let's bring in Cliff May. He's the founder and president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Welcome, Cliff. What do you make of this changing tone and frankly, quite a harsh tone by the U.S. and President Biden toward Israel in the wake of this tragic mistake?
Yes, I think that's right. Look, this was a tragic mistake, and it was a mistake. The Israelis acknowledged that it was a mistake. They immediately went to an investigation. 2 senior IDF leaders have already been fired from their jobs because of it. The Israelis have already begun to do things to take steps to better protect aid vehicles. But it's a difficult thing to do. It's a war zone. People need to know that. If I'm Yahya Sinwar sitting in my tunnel in Rafah, I think I'm encouraged because while deaths like this represent a tragedy for Israel, that is the strategy of Hamas. Kill as many Gazans as possible, as well as many Israelis. Kill as many aid workers as possible, and figure that Israel will take the blame, and that you can have a wedge between the Israelis and the Americans. You know, people don't seem to recognize that quite a few Gazans have been killed by Hamas for distributing aid. They've been accused of collaboration with Israel. I think this is it's a very bad sign in relations, and it doesn't help the hostages. If I'm Yahya Sinwar, I think I'm not releasing the hostages. I am not going to lay down my weapons, and I'm going to negotiate tougher. Don't forget, Hamas just said we will not agree to a ceasefire deal that has 40 terrorists for every hostage. That's not good enough for us.
What do you make of the suggestion? It's not, the White House didn't say it, but John Kirby didn't rule it out. And some members of the Democratic Party in Congress have been saying that they want to condition U.S. military aid on essentially doing what the president wants by not going into Rafah, for instance, and endorsing the idea of an immediate ceasefire.
Yeah, look, it's possible that could happen. I can predict only speculate on the Israeli response, and I think it would be that the Israelis believe that they can't not have this war end with Hamas still in power in Rafah and possibly elsewhere, with Yahya Sinwar coming out of the tunnel, flashing a victory sign, holding a weapon, saying, you see, we're still in control. We beat them. I don't think they can do that. Now, if they get fewer weapons from the U.S., that's a bad thing. The weapons they use may be more precise. I'd look at a little history. I don't have my whiteboard like Harov, but in 1967, Lyndon Johnson told the Israelis, look, you need to incur more damage from Egypt and from Syria before you go into a war. The Israelis said, we can't, we're too small. The 67 war ended in 6 days, and the Israelis were victorious. A few years later, Reagan said, don't take out the Syriac reactor nuclear reactor in Iraq. The Israelis did so anyhow. I remember talking to Jean Kirkpatrick about that. She was at the United Nations. She denounced the Israelis, said she was not proud of having done that because she knew that they were right. A few years later, 2007, I think it was, the Al-Kibar reactor in Syria, which the North Koreans had helped build. The Israelis were also advised or instructed by the U.S. not to take that out. They did. Anybody with a shred of diplomatic and strategic sense knows the Israelis made the right decision. So if the Israelis have to go it alone, I suspect they will, because they don't have the liberty and the luxury that the U.S. had, say, to capitulate, as Biden did to the Taliban. And by the way, a reminder on that. After that, during that capitulation, 13 Americans were killed by ISIS-K. The U.S. decided to go after the perpetrators. They made a mistake, and the mistake meant that they killed an aid worker and 10 other civilians, including 7 children. It took weeks before the Pentagon acknowledged that mistake. Even the best armies, and that includes the U.S., and that includes the IDF, even the best armies can make mistakes in the fog of war at night on an open battlefield. Any reporter who's been on an open battlefield knows how dangerous it is, no matter what precautions you take.
Cliff, we got about a minute left, but I want to ask you about an example of the Israelis acting as you suggested recently, and that was the strike last week against the Iranian IRGC generals in Syria. It seems to have been a very targeted and effective strike, and Iran has vowed to fight back. And some critics are saying that was a reckless attack by Israel. What do you think?
Right. So in this case, the intelligence was very good, and the strike was very precise. I think the Israelis are making an important point, and they talk about it this way. They say when the Israelis are fighting Hamas, when they're fighting Hezbollah, if they're fighting the Houthis, if they're fighting the Shia militias in Syria and Iraq, they're fighting the tentacles of an octopus. But the head of the octopus sleeps soundly in Tehran. Now, they didn't attack in Tehran, but they attacked. But the guys they attacked was very much the orchestrator for the octopus, including of the 10/7 attacks. We know that, and they were saying, "We are not going to let you off the hook. We know who's responsible. Iran's responsible. This is the command and control headquarters. It's not actually a consular office. We know that's the case." Hussein Abdul Hussein, one of our researchers, checked the Syrian media. This was a separate building, but even if it wasn't, the Iranians took over the American embassy. They hit the Israeli embassy in Argentina. They have no right to complain.
All right, Cliff May, thanks very much for that insight. Appreciate it.